The silence was wrong. Captain Jake Morrison had been listening to space chatter for 23 years, and he knew what the void was supposed to sound like. Radio waves carrying trade negotiations between the Vegan colonies, encrypted military, channels from the Centauri defense fleet, even the random noise from mining operations in the asteroid belts. Space was never truly quiet. But for 3 months now, the galaxy had gone silent. Jake stood on the bridge of the Meridian, watching his communications officer work through the frequencies one more time. Officer Ben Carter was young, maybe 25, with the kind of eager face that still believed every problem had a solution. He adjusted dials and checked connections with the patience of someone who had not yet learned that sometimes the universe simply stopped making sense. "Anything?" Jake asked. Ben shook his head. "Same as yesterday, Captain, same as last week. The only signal we're getting is that distress call from Earth." Jake walked over to the communications console and listened to the static. Buried in the white noise was a pattern, repeating every 47 seconds. 3 short bursts, 3 long, 3 short again. The ancient SOS signal that humans had used centuries ago when they were still trapped on their home planet. "How long has it been broadcasting?" Jake asked. "According to the timestamp, about 6 months," Ben replied. "Started during what their records call World War III. The signal is coming from multiple locations across their planet." Dr. Lisa Parker looked up from her science station. She was a small woman with dark hair and the kind of intense focus that made people uncomfortable. She had been studying Earth's transmission since they first detected the SOS signal, trying to understand what kind of species would send such a primitive distress call. "The signal is genuine," Lisa said. "The transmission patterns match exactly with historical human emergency protocols. But here's what I don't understand. According to our long-range sensors, World War III ended 2 months ago. So why are they still broadcasting the SOS?" Commander Nick Davis turned away from the tactical display. He was older than the rest of them, with gray hair and scars on his hands from his early days doing first contact work. He had seen enough alien species to know that war rarely ended cleanly. "Maybe they're still fighting," Nick said. "Underground resistance. Survivors in bunkers. Could be they don't know the war is over." Jake nodded, but something felt wrong about that explanation. He had read the reports about Earth. The planet was listed in the Galactic database as hosting primitive life. The humans were supposed to be barely out of their Stone Age, struggling with basic technology. The idea that they could fight a global war was surprising enough. The idea that they could build transmitters powerful enough to reach interstellar space was almost impossible. "How strong is the signal?" Jake asked. Ben checked his instruments. "That's another weird thing, Captain. It's way too strong. According to our database, humans shouldn't have the technology to broadcast beyond their own solar system, but this signal is reaching us from 12 light years away." Lisa pulled up a hologram of Earth above her console. The planet looked blue and green and peaceful from this distance. White clouds swirled around continents that seemed too organized, too planned. Most inhabited worlds showed the random scatter of civilization growing naturally. Earth looked like someone had designed it. "I've been analyzing their electromagnetic emissions," Lisa said. "The planet is putting out way more energy than it should. The power readings are off the charts. Either humans are much more advanced than we thought, or something else is happening down there." Jake studied the hologram. 12 ships had been sent by the Intergalactic Rescue Coalition when Earth's SOS was first detected. The Meridian was the fastest, so they had arrived first. The other ships were still days behind them. "Any word from the other rescue ships?" Jake asked. Ben shook his head. "That's just it, Captain. I can't reach them either. All communication beyond about 10 light years just cuts off. It's like there's a dead zone around this whole sector." Nick walked over to stand beside Jake. "Captain, I've been thinking, what if the SOS isn't what we think it is?" "What do you mean?" "Look at the timing," Nick said. "The signal starts 6 months ago. Within 3 months, all galactic communication in this region goes silent. Now we show up and find a planet that's supposedly primitive, but is broadcasting signals that reach interstellar space. Don't you think that's too many coincidences?" Jake had been thinking the same thing, but he did not want to voice his suspicions. The rescue mission was supposed to be simple. Find the survivors, offer assistance, file a report. The kind of routine, operation that happened dozens of times every year when primitive civilizations got into trouble. But routine operations did not make entire sectors of the galaxy go quiet. Lisa, what do we know about human psychology? Jake asked. Lisa brought up files on her screen. Not much. They're classified as an emotional species. High levels of aggression, but also high levels of cooperation when facing external threats. They have a history of tribal warfare, but they also have examples of entire populations uniting against common enemies. What kind of common enemies? Natural disasters mostly, plagues, asteroid impacts. They seem to do their best work when they think they're about to go extinct. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. He looked at the hologram of Earth again, seeing it differently now. Not a planet in distress, but a planet that had been cornered. Ben, I want you to scan for any ships in this system. Anything that doesn't belong. Already did, Captain, it's just us. What about wreckage? Debris fields? Any sign that other ships have been here? Ben ran the scans again, more carefully this time. After several minutes, he looked up with a pale face. Captain, I'm reading debris signatures from at least 40 different ship types scattered throughout the outer system. Some of it looks fresh, like within the last few months. The bridge went quiet. Jake stared at the peaceful blue planet on the hologram and tried to make sense of what they were seeing. 40 ships worth of debris. A primitive planet broadcasting impossible signals. An entire sector of space gone silent. Set course for Earth, Jake said quietly. And prepare for anything. As the Meridian began its approach to the third planet from Sol, none of them noticed that Earth's SOS signal had changed. The 47-second pattern was now 46 seconds. Then 45, like a countdown. The debris field told a story that Jake Morrison did not want to believe. The Meridian drifted through the outer edges of the Sol system, its sensors cataloging the wreckage scattered across millions of miles of space. What Ben Carter had detected from a distance was much worse up close. These were not the remains of some ancient battle. The metal was still warm. The energy signatures were still fading. How recent? Jake asked. Lisa Parker ran her scanners over a chunk of hull plating that had once belonged to a Zephyrian cruiser. The writing on the side was still visible, though it had been torn apart by some incredible force. This piece broke off maybe. 2 weeks ago, Lisa said. Captain, I'm reading debris from 12 different species here. Vegan Republic ships, Centauri Defense Fleet, even some Andromedan vessels. Nick Davis studied the tactical display with growing alarm. Those are all major powers. What were they doing here? Jake knew the answer, and it made his stomach twist. He had read enough classified reports to understand how the galaxy really worked. When a primitive species started broadcasting into space, the advanced civilizations paid attention, not to help, to watch. They were monitoring Earth, Jake said, quietly. All of them. Ben looked confused. Monitoring? But the humans are supposed to be primitive. Why would anyone waste resources monitoring a pre-space civilization? Lisa brought up files on her console. Because humans are interesting. Look at their development curve. They went from horse-drawn carts to nuclear weapons in less than 200 years. That's not normal. Most species take thousands of years to make that jump. She pulled up more data. And their wars. Most species fight over resources or territory. Humans fight over ideas. They'll die for concepts that don't even exist physically. Religion, freedom, honor, that kind of psychological profile makes them unpredictable. Jake nodded. He had seen the observation reports that came from primitive world monitoring. The galactic powers treated it like entertainment, betting pools on when species would destroy themselves, viewing parties to watch particularly brutal conflicts. It was not officially sanctioned, but everyone knew it happened. So they were all here watching World War III, Jake said, like some kind of sick game show. That would explain the debris field, Nick said. Maybe the humans got lucky, shot down a few observation ships. But Jake was looking at the scanner readings more carefully. The debris was not random. It formed a rough sphere around Earth, with gaps pointing toward the major galactic trade routes. Like something had pushed outward from the planet in all directions, but had been careful about which directions it pushed. "Ben, I want you to map the debris patterns," Jake said. "Show me exactly where each piece is located." Ben worked for several minutes building a three-dimensional map of the wreckage. When it was complete, everyone on the bridge went silent. The debris field was not random at all. It was organized. Every major galactic power was represented, but their ships had been destroyed in a specific order. The closest observation posts first, then the ones further out, then the ones at the edge of the system. Like something had worked its way outward, methodically taking its time. "This was not a battle," Nick said slowly. "This was an execution." Lisa was scanning deeper into the wreckage, trying to understand what kind of weapons could have done this kind of damage. The ships had not been blown apart by missiles or energy beams. They looked like they had been pulled apart by invisible hands piece by piece. "Captain, I'm not reading any weapon signatures," Lisa said. "No radiation from energy weapons. No chemical residue from explosives. These ships were just disassembled." Jake felt cold despite the warm air on the bridge. "How do you disassemble a starship without weapons? I don't know. But whatever did this was incredibly precise. Look at this." Lisa highlighted a section of Centauri hull plating. "The metal has been separated at the molecular level. It's like someone reached into the ship and just turned off the forces holding it together." Ben had been monitoring communications during their investigation. Now he looked up with a worried expression. "Captain, I've been trying to contact the other rescue ships in our fleet. I can't reach any of them. Equipment malfunction?" "No, sir, the signals are going out, but they're not getting through. It's like there's some kind of interference field around this entire region of space." Jake walked to the main viewport and stared at Earth. The planet looked exactly like it had in all the observation reports. Blue oceans, green continents, white clouds swirling in normal weather patterns. Nothing that suggested the kind of power that could destroy 40 starships. "Lisa, what's the current status of the SOS signal?" Lisa checked her instruments. "Still broadcasting. But Captain, the timing has changed again. It's down to 38 seconds between repetitions now." "That's not random," Nick said. "It's counting down to something." Jake made a decision that felt like jumping off a cliff. "Take us into the inner system. I want a close look at Earth." "Captain," Nick said carefully, "given what happened to those other ships, maybe we should wait for backup." "What backup? We can't even contact our own fleet." Jake turned back to his crew. "Look, we came here to answer a distress call. Whatever happened to those other ships, they were not here to help. They were here to watch. Maybe that makes a difference." Ben began plotting a course toward Earth, but his hands were shaking slightly. "Sir, should I prepare the weapon systems?" Jake thought about that for a long moment. The Meridian was a rescue ship, not a warship. Their weapons were designed for clearing debris and defending against pirates, not fighting whatever had destroyed 40 military vessels. "No," Jake said finally. "If the humans can do what I think they can do, our weapons won't help us anyway. And if they're really asking for help, showing up armed might send the wrong message." As the Meridian moved deeper into the Sol system, the SOS signal continued its countdown. 37 seconds, 36, 35. Lisa noticed something else in her scans. "Captain, I'm detecting organized electromagnetic emissions from Earth's surface, not just the SOS signal. There are communication networks down there that are way too advanced for their supposed technology level." "What kind of communications?" "Quantum entanglement networks, faster-than-light data transmission." "Captain, the humans are not primitive at all. They're more advanced than most of the species that were watching them." Jake stared at the growing image of Earth on their main screen. The planet that had sent a desperate plea for help. The planet that had somehow destroyed 40 observation ships without leaving a trace of conventional weapons. The planet that was counting down to something in 34 seconds and falling. "Ben," Jake said quietly, "how long until we reach Earth orbit?" "At current speed, about 6 hours, Captain." Jake looked at the countdown timer that Lisa had put on the main screen. They would reach Earth in 6 hours. The countdown would reach 0 in approximately 4 hours. He had the uncomfortable feeling that the timing was not a coincidence. Earth looked wrong from orbit. Jake Morrison had seen hundreds of inhabited worlds during his career, and they all followed the same basic pattern. Cities clustered around water sources, roads connecting population centers in rough straight lines. The random sprawl of civilization growing naturally over time. Earth was different. The cities were too organized, too planned. They stretched across entire continents in perfect geometric patterns. The roads formed complex networks that looked more like circuit boards than transportation systems. And everything pulsed with a faint blue glow that hurt to look at directly. Life signs? Jake asked. Lisa Parker checked her scanners 3 times before answering. 7 billion humans on the surface, all alive, all active. But Captain, their biological readings are strange. Strange how? Their brain activity is synchronized. Not exactly identical, but there are patterns. Like they're all thinking about the same things at the same time. Ben Carter had been monitoring Earth's communication network since they entered orbit. His face was pale as he looked up from his console. Captain, I'm picking up billions of individual conversations down there, but they're all saying the same basic things. Everyone is talking about the visitors, about the watchers, about making them understand. Nick Davis studied the tactical display. Any signs of the military forces that fought World War III? That's just it, Ben said. I can't find any evidence that there was ever a war down there. No bomb craters, no destroyed cities, no military installations. It's like the war never happened. Jake felt the pieces of the puzzle shifting in his mind, but he could not make them fit together properly. The SOS signal had started during World War III, but there was no sign of any war on the planet below. Just billions of humans living in impossibly organized cities, all thinking similar thoughts. Lisa, how long until the SOS countdown reaches 0? 47 minutes, Captain. Jake made a decision. Prepare a shuttle. I'm going down to the surface. Sir, Nick said, I really think we should wait for backup. What backup? We haven't been able to contact anyone outside this system for days. For all we know, the entire Galactic communication network has collapsed. Jake headed toward the shuttle bay. I'm taking a small team down. If something happens to us, you get the Meridian out of here and find a way to warn the Coalition. Captain, Lisa said, I should come with you. If the humans have advanced technology, you'll need a science officer to understand it. Jake nodded. Ben, you're with us too. If they want to communicate, we'll need our best communications specialist. Nick remained on the bridge to monitor the shuttle mission. As Jake, Lisa, and Ben descended through Earth's atmosphere, the planet's true nature became more apparent. The cities were not just organized, they were alive. Buildings shifted and flowed like living tissue. Streets rearranged themselves to accommodate traffic that moved in perfect coordination. Landing coordinates? Ben asked. The source of the SOS signal, Jake said. If they want to talk, that's where they'll be waiting. The signal was coming from what had once been called North America, from a location that their databases identified as the former site of a military installation. But when their shuttle landed, they found something very different. The landing site was a perfect circle of grass surrounded by normal-looking suburban houses. Children played in the yards. Adults worked in their gardens. Everything looked peaceful and ordinary except for the fact that everyone stopped what they were doing and looked at the shuttle the moment it touched down. Not just the people nearby, everyone. Jake could see through the shuttle's cameras that people hundreds of miles away had all turned to face their exact location. That's not normal, Ben whispered. Jake activated the shuttle's external speakers. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Galactic Rescue Coalition. We received your distress signal. We're here to help. A man walked toward their shuttle. He was maybe 40 years old, with brown hair and calm eyes. He wore simple clothes and moved with the relaxed confidence of someone who was exactly where he belonged. Captain Morrison, the man said, my name is Pete Williams. We've been waiting for you. Jake opened the shuttle door and stepped out, followed by Lisa and Ben. The air smelled clean and fresh like Earth was supposed to smell before industrialization, but Jake's instruments showed that the atmosphere contained energy particles that should not exist in nature. Mr. Williams, Jake said. We received an SOS signal from this location. Are you in distress? Pete smiled, but there was something cold in his expression. Not anymore, Captain. We solved our problem. Your problem? The Watchers, Pete said simply. The ones who came to see how quickly we would destroy ourselves. The ones who made bets on when we would go extinct. The ones who recorded our wars and shared them for entertainment. Jake felt his blood turn cold. Mr. Williams, if you're referring to the observation ships in your outer system, we found debris. What happened to them? We asked them to leave, Pete said. They refused. Lisa stepped forward with her scanner. Sir, I'm reading massive energy, sources beneath this entire area. What kind of technology are you using? Pete looked at Lisa with the same calm expression. Technology we developed after we realized we were not alone. After we understood that our cry for help was being treated as a joke. After we learned that the advanced civilizations of the galaxy saw us as nothing more than interesting animals. The SOS signal, Ben said suddenly. It wasn't asking for rescue from the war, it was asking for rescue from isolation. Very good, Pete said. We sent that signal hoping someone would answer. Someone did answer. Dozens of someones. But not to help. To watch, to study, to be entertained by our suffering. Jake tried to understand what Pete was telling them. So you fought back against the observation ships? We defended ourselves, Pete corrected. But that was just the beginning. You see, Captain, we realized something important. If they were watching us, they were probably watching other species too. Other young civilizations trying to find their place in the galaxy. Other planets sending out their first desperate calls for help. What did you do? Pete's smile grew wider, but his eyes remained cold. We made sure they would never ignore another cry for help. We made sure they would never treat another species' suffering as entertainment. The countdown on Ben's communicator showed 15 minutes remaining. Jake looked around at the perfect suburban scene, at the children playing and the adults gardening, all of them moving with the same strange coordination. Mr. Williams, Jake said carefully, what happens when the countdown reaches 0? You'll see, Captain, everyone will see. The galaxy has been very quiet lately, hasn't it? No chatter on the communication channels, no trade negotiations, no military broadcasts. Jake's heart began to race. The galactic communication blackout. You caused that? We caused the Watchers to lose interest in watching, Pete said. Now they focus on their own worlds, their own problems, their own people. Isn't that better? Lisa's scanner was beeping frantically. Captain, the energy readings are spiking. Whatever they built down there, it's about to activate. Pete looked up at the sky where the Meridian was still in orbit. Don't worry about your ship, Captain. You came here to help. That makes you different from the others. Different how? The others came to watch us suffer. You came to end our suffering. That matters. The countdown reached 10 minutes, and Jake realized with growing horror that Earth's SOS had never been a call for rescue. It had been a test, a way to see who would come to help and who would come to watch, and humanity had been keeping score. Pete Williams led them through the suburban streets toward what looked like an ordinary community center. Children waved as they passed. Adults smiled and nodded. Everything seemed normal except for the fact that Jake could feel eyes watching, them from every window, every doorway, every shadow. How many people know we're here? Jake asked. Everyone, Pete said simply. We share information now, all of us. It makes things easier. Lisa checked her scanner as they walked. Captain, I'm reading the same quantum signatures from every human we pass. It's like they're all connected to the same network. What kind of network? Jake asked. Pete stopped walking and turned to face them. The kind that lets 7 billion people think as one when they need to. The kind that lets us coordinate responses across an entire planet in real time. The kind that makes us very good at solving problems. Ben's communicator showed 5 minutes left on the countdown. Mr. Williams, what happens when that timer reaches 0? The lesson begins, Pete said. They reached the community center, which looked like any other building from the outside. But when Pete opened the door, Jake saw that the interior was something else entirely. The walls were covered with screens, showing star maps, communication logs, and what looked like surveillance footage from dozens of different worlds. A woman approached them. She was maybe 50 years old with gray hair and tired eyes. But when she spoke, her voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "Captain Morrison, I'm Amy Clark. I coordinate our response team." "Response to what?" Jake asked. Amy gestured to the screens around them. "To this." She pointed to a display showing communication intercepts. "These are recordings we captured from the observation ships. Would you like to hear what they were saying about us?" Before Jake could answer, Amy activated the playback. A voice filled the room, speaking in the clicking language of the Zephyrian Republic. "The humans are fighting again. Third global war. In a century. The betting pool has them extinct within 6 months." Another voice, this one from a Centauri military officer. "Look at this footage. They're actually crying as they die. It's hilarious." A third voice, speaking Andromedan. "We should make a documentary. The Last Days of Earth. A comedy in 3 acts." The recordings went on. Species after species treating human suffering as entertainment. Military officers making jokes about human deaths. Scientists placing bets on extinction dates. Civilians hosting viewing parties to watch Earth's wars like sporting events. Jake felt sick. He had known that primitive world monitoring happened, but he had never heard the actual conversations. The casual cruelty was worse than anything he had imagined. "How long were they watching?" Lisa asked quietly. 200 years, Amy said. "Ever since we first started broadcasting radio signals. They cataloged every war, every disaster, every moment of human pain, and they laughed." Pete walked to another screen showing a map of the galaxy. Red dots marked the locations of various civilizations. "But here's what they didn't understand about humans. We don't just get angry. We get organized." Amy pointed to the countdown timer. 3 minutes, Captain. Would you like to see what we built?" She led them through a door that opened onto a staircase going down, far down. As they descended, Jake realized they were entering a facility that stretched deep into the Earth's crust. The walls were lined with technology that seemed to bend light around itself. "We call it the silence engine," Amy said as they walked. "It took us 3 years to build. Every human on Earth contributed something. Raw materials, labor, ideas. Even the children helped by staying quiet while the adults worked. They reached a vast chamber where something impossible waited. It looked like a machine, but it moved like a living thing. Crystalline structures grew and shifted in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Energy flowed through conduits that seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions. "What does it do?" Ben asked. "It solves the Watcher problem," Pete said. "Permanently." Lisa scanned the device with growing amazement. "Captain, this is operating on principles I don't understand. It's manipulating quantum fields on a galactic scale." Amy smiled. "We learned a lot from studying the wreckage of those observation ships. Amazing what you can accomplish when 7 billion minds focus on the same goal." The countdown reached 1 minute. Jake could hear a humming sound building in the air around them. The silence engine was powering up. "Captain Morrison," Amy said, "I want you to understand something. This isn't about revenge. Revenge would be destroying their worlds, killing their people. We're not monsters." "Then what is this about?" Jake asked. "Justice," Amy said simply, "and education." The countdown hit 30 seconds. The humming grew louder. Jake could feel the vibrations in his bones. "Every species that watched us suffer," Amy continued. "Every civilization that treated our pain as entertainment is about to learn what silence feels like. Not death, not destruction, just disinterest." Disinterest in what? In talking to anyone outside their own worlds, in watching other species, in interfering with civilizations they consider primitive. They'll be perfectly happy focusing on their own problems for a while. 20 seconds. The energy in the chamber was building to levels that made Jake's instruments scream warnings. "What about innocent species?" Lisa asked. Ones that never watched Earth? Amy's expression softened slightly. The engine is precise, Dr. Parker. It only affects those who participated in our humiliation. Species that never knew about Earth will continue their conversations across the stars. But they'll find themselves in a much quieter galaxy. A galaxy where the former superpowers suddenly prefer to mind their own business. 10 seconds. Jake realized what humanity had done. They had not conquered the galaxy through force. They had restructured it through technology that was beyond anything the major powers possessed. How is this possible? Jake asked. How did you develop this level of technology so quickly? Pete smiled. Captain, when an entire species decides to work together on a single problem, amazing things happen. When 7 billion people share their knowledge, pool their resources, and focus their creativity on one goal, they can accomplish miracles. 5 seconds. Amy looked at Jake with eyes that held no hatred, only determination. The Watchers wanted to see how the human story would end, she said. Well, Captain Morrison, this is how it ends. Not with our extinction, but with our graduation. We're no longer the Watched. We're the Watchers now. The countdown reached 0. The silence engine, activated with a sound like the universe taking a deep breath. And across the galaxy, a billion conversations simply stopped. The silence hit like a physical wave. Jake Morrison felt it first as a pressure in his ears, then as a strange emptiness in his mind. For 23 years he had lived with the constant background noise of galactic civilization, trade chatter, military channels, scientific broadcasts, the endless conversation of 1,000 species spread across countless worlds. Now there was nothing. Ben Carter stood frozen at his scanner, watching the communication channels go dark one by one. Captain, I'm losing contact with everything. Centauri Command, the Vegan trade networks, even the emergency frequencies. It's like the entire galaxy just stopped talking. Amy Clark watched the displays around the chamber with satisfaction. Each screen showed a different sector of space, and each sector was going quiet in sequence. The effect was spreading outward from Earth at faster than light speeds, following the quantum networks that connected every major civilization. How? Lisa Parker whispered, studying her instruments. How is this spreading so fast? Quantum entanglement, Amy explained. Every time those species intercepted our transmissions, they created a connection. Every time they watched our broadcasts, they linked themselves to us. We're just using those connections now. Pete Williams pulled up a galactic map showing the progression of the silence. Red zones marked areas where communication had ceased. Blue zones showed regions still talking. The pattern was not random. Look at this, Pete said, pointing to the display. The Zephyrian Republic went quiet first. They had been watching us the longest. The Centauri Defense Fleet followed. Then the Andromedan Observatory Network. Jake studied the pattern. You're targeting them in order of how much they watched Earth. Exactly, Amy said. The species that made the most entertainment from our suffering get the longest time out. Lisa looked confused. Time out? That's all this is, Dr. Parker. A temporary loss of interest in external communication. They're not dying. They're not suffering. They're just suddenly finding their own worlds much more interesting than anybody else's. Ben checked his equipment again. Captain, I'm still getting readings from some sectors. The Tau Ceti colonies are still broadcasting. So are the mining operations in the Proxima system. Amy nodded. Those are young civilizations. They never had the technology to monitor Earth. The engine only affects species that actively participated in watching us. Jake was beginning to understand the true scope of what humanity had accomplished. You've created selective isolation. The civilizations that treated you badly lose interest in galactic politics. The innocent ones continue normally. Better than that, Pete said. The young civilizations now have room to grow without interference. No more advanced species placing bets on their development. No more viewing parties when they go through difficult periods. They get to make their own mistakes and learn from them. The silence was still spreading. Jake watched entire sectors of the galaxy go dark on the communication networks. Species that had dominated galactic politics for millennia, were suddenly turning inward, focusing only on their own worlds. How long will it last? Jake asked. Amy considered the question. That depends on them. The effect will fade naturally over time, but only if they genuinely change their attitudes. If they go back to treating other species as entertainment, the engine will activate again. You built a behavior modification system for the entire galaxy, Lisa said with awe. We built a teaching tool, Amy corrected. Humans are good teachers. We had to be. We spent most of our history trying to educate ourselves out of our own worst impulses. Jake thought about the implications. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy through military force. They had restructured it through psychological manipulation on a scale that no one had thought possible. What about us? Jake asked. The Meridian was part of the rescue fleet. We came to help. Pete smiled, and this time it reached his eyes. That's why you can still communicate with your ship, Captain. Your intentions were genuine. The engine recognizes the difference between watchers and helpers. Ben's communicator crackled to life. It was Nick Davis calling from the Meridian. Captain, what's happening down there? I'm reading massive energy discharges from the planet, and half the galaxy just went silent. Jake looked at Amy, who nodded permission. Nick, we're fine, but we need to talk when we get back to the ship. Things are more complicated than we thought. Amy led them to another section of the chamber where additional screens showed the current status of various civilizations. The Zephyrian Republic was still functioning normally. Their cities operated, their people worked. But their external communication network showed no activity. They're not prisoners, Amy explained. They can send messages if they really want to. They just don't want to anymore. They're finding their own problems much more interesting than galactic affairs. Lisa studied the displays. This is incredible. You've changed the psychology of entire species without harming a single individual. Humans excel at psychological warfare, Pete said. We've been practicing on ourselves for thousands of years. Jake walked to a display showing Earth's current status. The planet pulsed with energy patterns that formed complex geometric shapes. What happens to Earth now? Do you join galactic civilization or remain isolated? Amy and Pete exchanged a look. We become the guardians, Amy said. The galaxy needs watchers, Captain, but it needs the right kind of watchers. Ones who intervene to help, not to harm. You're taking over the role the old powers used to play. We're taking over the role they should have played, Pete corrected. When a young civilization sends out its first distress call, we'll be the ones who answer. When a species faces extinction, we'll offer genuine help instead of entertainment value. Jake realized that humanity had done something unprecedented in galactic history. They had used superior technology not to dominate but to teach, not to conquer but to protect. The SOS signal, Jake said suddenly. It's still broadcasting. Amy nodded. It will broadcast forever now. But it's not asking for help anymore. It's offering it. Any species in genuine distress can send a signal to Earth and we'll respond. Not to watch. To help. Ben was monitoring the galactic communication networks. Captain, the silence is still spreading. I'm reading communication blackouts in over 60% of known space. 60%, Amy said with satisfaction. That's about how many species were actively monitoring primitive worlds for entertainment. The other 40% are continuing their normal conversations. Jake looked around the chamber at the impossible technology that had reshaped galactic civilization in a matter of minutes. How long did you plan this? Since the day we realized we were being watched, Pete said. Since the day we understood that our cry for help was being treated as a joke. We knew we had to do something. We just had to figure out what. Amy walked over to a control panel where the SOS signal was still broadcasting. Captain Morrison, you and your crew represent something important. You came here to help strangers in distress. That makes you the kind of people the galaxy needs more of. Jake felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. Humanity had changed everything, and now they were asking him to be part of whatever came next. The galaxy was quiet now, but it was a different kind of quiet. Not the silence of death, but the silence of reflection. The silence of civilizations learning to look inward instead of treating others as objects of amusement. And in that silence, Jake could hear something new beginning. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Meridian 3 days later, watching Earth shrink in the view screen. The planet looked different now, not just because of what he knew about it, but because it actually was different. The blue glow was stronger. The geometric patterns in the cities were more complex. Earth was still changing, still growing into whatever humanity was becoming. Nick Davis sat at the tactical station, reading reports from across the galaxy. "Captain, we're getting confirmation from the sectors still online. The silence is holding steady. No communication from any of the major powers for 72 hours now." Lisa Parker looked up from her science console. "I'm monitoring the quantum signatures from Earth. The silence engine is still active, but it's operating at minimal power now, like it's just maintaining what it already accomplished." Ben Carter had spent the last 3 days trying to contact other rescue ships. "Still no word from the rest of our fleet, Captain, but I did get a message from a Tau Ceti research vessel. They're asking if we know why the Centauri defense fleet stopped responding to emergency calls." Jake turned away from the view screen. Before leaving Earth, Amy Clark had given him a choice. He could take the Meridian back to Coalition space and report what he had found. He could tell the truth about humanity's capabilities and risk starting a panic among the remaining active civilizations. Or he could accept a different mission. "Ben, open a channel to Earth," Jake said. Amy Clark's face appeared on the main screen. Behind her, Jake could see the command center that humanity had built beneath their peaceful suburban streets. Screens showed the status of 1,000 worlds, communication networks monitoring distress signals across the galaxy, the infrastructure of a species that had appointed itself guardian of galactic civilization. "Captain Morrison," Amy said, "have you made your decision?" Jake had been thinking about it for 3 days, about the recordings of alien species laughing at human suffering, about the 40 ships worth of debris that had once belonged to civilizations that treated Earth like a nature documentary, about the choice between reporting to his superiors and accepting responsibility for what came next. "We're staying," Jake said. "The Meridian volunteers for the new mission." Amy smiled. "Excellent. You'll be working with Pete Williams. He's coordinating our response teams." Pete appeared on screen beside Amy. "Captain, we've already detected 3 distress signals that need immediate attention. A mining colony in the Rigel system has lost life support. A research station near Vega is under attack by pirates. And there's a plague outbreak on a farming world in the Altair sector." "What about the local authorities?" Nick asked. "Shouldn't they be handling these situations?" "The local authorities are currently experiencing a profound lack of interest in galactic affairs," Amy said dryly. "The Centauri Defense Fleet is focusing on domestic issues. The Zephyrian Republic has canceled all external operations. The Andromedan Navy has gone home." Lisa studied the data flowing across her screens. "So you're taking over their responsibilities?" "We're doing what should have been done all along," Pete said, "helping people who need help. The difference is that we're not going to charge fees or demand political concessions or make entertainment out of their suffering." Jake looked at his crew. Ben was young and eager for adventure. Lisa was fascinated by the opportunity to study genuine humanitarian work on a galactic scale. Nick was old enough to remember when the Coalition actually tried to help people instead of just managing trade disputes. "What are our orders?" Jake asked. Amy brought up a star chart showing the 3 distress signals. "Start with the mining colony. They have maybe 6 hours of air left. After that, the research station. The pirates are using stolen Centauri ships, but they're not military trained. Should be straightforward. And the plague? We'll handle that one directly," Pete said. "We're sending a medical team from Earth. Turns out that when you focus the resources of an entire planet on solving problems, you can accomplish miracles." Jake nodded. The Meridian had been built as a rescue ship. For the first time in years, it would actually be used for rescue work instead of managing political crises. "One question," Nick said. "What happens when the old powers decide they want to resume galactic operations, when the silence effect wears off?" Amy's expression grew serious. "That depends on what they learned during their time out. If they come back with the same attitudes, treating other species as entertainment or exploitation opportunities, the engine will activate again. But if they genuinely change, if they start helping instead of watching, then they'll be welcome to rejoin Galactic civilization. And if they try to retaliate against Earth? Lisa asked. Pete smiled. Dr. Parker, they had 40 ships monitoring Earth when we activated the engine. Those ships had weapons capable of sterilizing planets. Where are those ships now? Jake remembered. The debris field scattered throughout the Sol system. Ships that had been pulled apart at the molecular level without any trace of conventional weapons. Point taken, Amy leaned forward. Captain, we're not interested in conquest or domination. We're interested in justice and protection. The galaxy needs guardians who understand the difference between helping and harming, between rescuing and exploiting. Why us? Jake asked. Why trust outsiders with this mission? Because you came to help, Amy said simply. When Earth sent a distress signal, you responded with a rescue ship instead of a surveillance drone. That tells us everything we need to know about your character. Ben was already plotting courses to the 3 emergency locations. Captain, if we leave now, we can reach the mining colony in 4 hours. Jake made his decision. The Coalition had sent him to answer a distress call. He had answered it, but not in the way anyone expected. Instead of rescuing Earth, Earth had rescued the galaxy from its own worst impulses. Set course for Rigel, Jake ordered. Maximum speed. As the Meridian jumped to hyperspace, Jake thought about the SOS signal still broadcasting from Earth. It was no longer a cry for help. It was a promise. A promise that when civilizations faced their darkest moments, when they sent desperate pleas into the void, someone would answer. Not to watch, not to judge, not to be entertained. To help. The galaxy was quiet now, but it was the quiet of a sleeping giant learning to dream better dreams. And in that quiet, Jake could hear the sound of hope beginning to grow. Behind them, Earth continued its patient broadcast. 3 short, 3 long, 3 short. The same signal that had started everything, but now it meant something different. Now, it meant that no one would ever face the darkness alone again. The stars were silent, but they were listening. And for the first time in galactic history, what they heard was the sound of genuine compassion echoing across the void. Humanity had graduated from being the watch to being the watchers, and they intended to do the job right.